Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will be talking about the topics which we have studied until now, because as I know, next week on Thursday we are going to have a midterm examination. So before the midterm examination, I would like to cover the topics, general review of the chapters that we have studied until now, and give some information from which chapters the questions are going to be. We are going to study chapter 5, which is measuring nations' income, and second one, measuring the cost of living. So you are responsible from two chapters, chapter 5 and chapter 6. So the questions are going to be multiple choice, and the questions are from these two chapters, chapter 5 and chapter 6. And that is why before we start the examination, I would like to cover a review of these two chapters so that we could get prepared for the midterm examination. So the data of macroeconomics, we will study from measuring the cost of measuring nation's income first of all, and then we will study measuring cost of living. So measuring nation's income, it is 23, but in your book it is chapter 5. So measuring nation's income, before we start the measuring nation's income, we will discuss the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics. You know, the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics is that microeconomics is the study of how individual households and firms make decisions and how they interact with one another. So you know, from here, you know that the word micro means what? Small. So microeconomics studies small parts of economics. What are the small parts of economics? They are individual, so one person, or household, which means family, also small part of economy, and firms, companies who produce goods. So actually, microeconomics studies how buyers, so households, and sellers, firms, interact with each other in the market and how they make decisions and how they interact with one another. So how households or consumers, buyers, make a decision in order to buy goods and services, how firms make a decision in order to make a goods and in order to maximize their profit when they are selling goods and services. This is about what microeconomics, which we have studied first semester. So microeconomics studies how buyers, individuals and households, and sellers make a decision. What does making a decision mean? You know, making decision means what is their aim? For example, buyer's aim, seller's aim. Buyer's aim is to spend as less as possible and to get maximum benefit from the bought product. On the other hand, firm's aim is to maximize their profit, so to sell as much as possible with higher prices and to produce goods and services with the minimum cost. And when they interact with one another, where they interact with one another in the markets. So in the markets, when we say we have studied in first semester different parts of what types of markets. It might be perfectly competitive market, it might be a monopoly market, it might be monopolistic competitive market, or it might be oligopoly market. So microeconomics, again, let me repeat, studies small parts of economy as individuals and firms, and about what does microeconomics study? their decisions their decisions about to get maximum benefit with their resources, and when they interact with one another, how they interact with one another in the what market. Second one, which we study this semester, is macroeconomics. The word macro, it is opposite of micro, which means what? Big. So we can understand logically that macroeconomics study big part of economy. What are these big part of economy? Is the study of economy as a whole. What does whole mean? Macroeconomics does not study only one firm or some industries firm or some buyers. Macroeconomics study economy, both of them in full. So buyers and sellers, like aggregate supply and aggregate demand. Not only one market, but the production of all goods and services in the country, not in the market, in one country or in one region or in one, let's say, in one big, let's say, regional integrated countries. So macroeconomics study economy as a whole. Its goal is to explain the economic changes that affect many households, firms, and markets at once. So the aim of macroeconomics is, what is it? To explain what? To explain what? Economic changes. What kind of economic changes we are talking about? So change in prices, change in production, change in income, change in unemployment, and so on. So different changes that affect who? Many households, firms, and markets at once. So this is the difference. Macroeconomics study what? Big picture. Microeconomics study what? Focused on small picture. So macroeconomics answers the questions like the following. Why is average income high in some countries and why it is low in other countries? So average income, what does average income mean? Average income means GDP, gross domestic product, divided by population gives us average in one country, how much one person in average earning in one country. So GDP divided by population gives average income. In some countries it might be low, in some countries it might be what? High. For example, in our country, in Kyrgyzstan, GDP per capita is counted to be nearly, if we calculate directly in nominal way, it is nearly $1,200 per capita. If you look to the nominal GDP per capita, for example, United States, it is nearly $50,000 per year. So why in United States income per capita is high than in Kyrgyzstan? So who answers to these questions? Macroeconomics answers to these questions. Question 2 that macroeconomics studies is, why do prices rise rapidly in some time periods while they are more stable in other periods? So why the prices for goods and services increase in some seasons or in some time, and why they are stable in other times? Who studies again to this question answers macroeconomics. Question 3 is, which the macroeconomics tries to study, is why do production and employment expand in some years and why it contracts in others. So why production of goods and services in one country and employment increase in some years and decrease in other years is also the answer to the question of macroeconomics. So economy is income and expenditure. When judging whether the economy is doing well or poorly, it is natural to look at the total income that everyone in the economy is earning. So when judging whether the economy is doing well or poorly, it is normal to look at the total income that everyone in the economy is earning. So if I want to judge one person's well-being, I have to ask his income. So how much you are earning per month or per year, and according to his income, I can judge his well-being. The same is logic is used in one country's income as well, because our topic is measuring nations' income, measuring countries, people's income in one country to understand how people are doing, how is their well-being in that country. We have to look to their income. If their income is high, we can say they are enjoying their life. If their income is less, we can say they are not enjoying their life. So, for an economy as a whole, income must equal expenditure because every transaction has buyer and what seller. So, for an economy as a whole, income must be equal to expenditure because every transaction has buyer and seller. Every dollar of spending by one sum buyer is a dollar of income for seller. So why we are talking about here? Because to measure nation's income, we have to look for the income of people and expenditure on people. So because our aim is to find the measuring nation's income to understand how much income people are getting in one country, we have to look how much money they are spending in the economy. So if we look spending, it means it's also what income. Why? Because every transaction in the as you mentioned, has two sides. For example, when I give, let's say this is my money, I want to buy this pen with this money. So someone is selling this product, I want to buy. So I am buyer, he is seller. Let's say this is $1. So when I spend $1 to buy this pen, what's going on? For me, it is what expenditure. For the seller, it is what income. It is income. So what's going on? Income equals to expenditure. That is why when we want to measure the income of a nation, we have to look to the expenditure rate. So how much people are spending to buy goods and services, and how much people are earning to buy goods and services. This is what income equals to expenditure. The measurement of gross domestic product. Gross domestic product, or GDP, is the measure of income and expenditure in an economy. So if you want to find GDP, gross and domestic product in one country, if you want to calculate GDP, actually GDP shows us the income of the country, income of people who are buying and selling in the so it is total market. What is GDP? If you look to the GDP is total market. So gross domestic product is a measure of the income and expenditure of an economy, as we have mentioned. It is total market of value of final goods and services produced within a country in a given period of time. So GDP, gross domestic product, why it is important? Because we want to measure again people's well-being, their well-being, and to measure people's well-being in one country, we have to look how much goods and services they are producing and how much goods and services they are selling and they are buying. So GDP is the main measurement of people's income, and it depends. If people are producing more, it means their income is high. When their income is high, it means their standard of living is also high. That's why main determinant of people's well-being, we in economics, we measure by measuring what GDP, gross domestic product. So what is it? It is total market value. It is important, market value of what kind of goods? Final goods and what services. Produce it, very important. Produce it. What is it? Where? Within a country, so inside the country, when in a given period of time. This is also what important. So the quality of income and expenditure can be illustrated with a circular flow diagram. We have mentioned before this one circular flow diagram. So you know this diagram. I will not stop on its what details, but in general the logic is that firms what produce, households buy, so demand and supply, and they meet in market for goods and services. At the same time, what there are market for goods and services. So let's say uh, firm open all the parts of this one. So what is it? Firms, let's say our firm produce ice cream, and to sell this ice cream, they bring this ice cream to this market. Households to buy this ice cream go to this market. They buy this ice cream and spend give money for that ice cream. This ice cream is brought by the firm, and this money which is spent by household, it is what revenue or income for firms. On the other hand, firms to produce ice cream, they need what factors of production, like households or workers, land, capital, and labor. These are the factors of production. Households supply. What do? They buy and give money to them. So this money again is income for households, and households spend. This is income. So actually, spending by households should be equal to spending by what firms. So in the economy, household spending equals to firm's income, or firm spending in market for factors of factor equals to household's income. So we see that income and expenditure is the same in the what in the market. So as I have mentioned before, GDP or gross domestic product is a market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given period of what time. So we said market value. What is it? Market value, it is price of goods and services. Output is valued at market prices. And for example, we produce 20 pen, and to find out 20 pen, let's say we produced uh, 10 computers in our country, plus let's say we produced 200, let's say cars, we produced, let's say 9, let's say what is it, let's say clothes, and so on, so on. So in one country, if we name the goods and services produced in one country, it is very hard, because we can't say here we produced this amount of clothes, this amount of cars, this amount of blah blah blah. So there are so many diversified. So there are many goods and services, and it is impossible to measure by the quantity or by the name of the product. What do we do in general? We just take their produced goods price value or market value, price of these products. We multiply it, or we convert their value into equal monetary value. So what do? We take the price of the product, multiply it to the quantity of goods and services that were produced in the economy. So when we multiply amount of goods and services with their market price or market value, we get total value of all goods and services which were produced in the economy, and we call this total value as a what GDP, or gross domestic product. So GDP is the market value of all final. All means all legal, not illegal. So what's the difference between legal good and illegal good? Well, if when the product is produced, if it is taxed, this is a legal good. If it is not taxed, it is illegal good. So only we count taxed goods, not illegal goods. And what kind of goods? Final good, not intermediate good. For example, to make this pen, I can divide this pen into different parts, this one, and this one. So I can't say that this is intermediate. I can't include intermediate goods price to the final good because it is not final good. When it is, let's say, to make this one, I need $3, and the price of pen in total, it is, let's say, $5. So the product of goods and services finally produced. This is final product. It is not important. So it records only value of what? Final goods, not intermediate goods. Value is counted only once. So second-hand products are not included to GDP. What can we say? For example, if I buy a car from a factory with 0 kilometers, it will affect my GDP. But if I buy second-hand car from someone else, it will not affect our GDP because if we count, it will be second time count, which will not. So it is important to buy a first-hand product. Goods and services, it includes both tangible goods, food, clothing, cars, and intangible goods, haircut, house cleaning, doctor visits, concerts, and so on. So produced, it includes goods and services currently produced, not transactions involving goods produced in the past. So this is, as we have mentioned, second-hand products are not included to GDP. Only first-hand products are set or included to gross domestic product, GDP. This is also important, ladies and gentlemen. Within a country, it should be inside the country, in the geographical borders of the country. It means the value of production within the geographic confines of the country. So, for example, a Kyrgyz citizen who is working, let's say, in Russia, his product is not included to GDP because he is not producing goods and services in Kyrgyzstan. Or let's say, foreigner Chinese people who has restaurant in Kyrgyzstan, his product will be called, if it is taxed, as a GDP of, is contributing to GDP of Kyrgyzstan, even he is not a citizen of Kyrgyz Republic. So what is the main point in here? Main point in here is that they are producing goods and services inside the geographical border of the country. So within a country, this is important. In a given period of time, so government or National Statistical Committee of Kyrgyz Republic, every 3 months or every 6 months or every year, by the end of the year, they count our gross domestic product or GDP. So it measures the value of production that takes place within a specific interval of time, usually year or quarter, which means about 3 months. So GDP includes all terms produced in the economy and sold legally, so taxed in the markets. What does not count, as we have mentioned, GDP excludes most items that are produced and consumed at home and that never enter the marketplace. For example, at home, I grow, let's say, tomatoes, potatoes, and let's say I have sheep, I have farm, I have, let's say, chickens, and I get the eggs from them, and I don't go to the market, so I don't buy goods and services. So when I consume from my home local products, they are not counted as a GDP because I don't spend money to buy from myself. Then they are not included to GDP. GDP counts only transactions between buyers and sellers. It includes items produced and sold illicitly, such as illegal drugs. So illegal drugs are not also included to GDP. So components of GDP measures for what people spend money. So expenditures actually equals to the income of goods and services. So people spend money for consumption, people spend money for investment, people spend money for government purchase, people spend money for net export, And so net exports actually, we will focus in each one, but Y in here represents, as I have mentioned here, this Y represents our GDP or total income, is the income, is expenditure of consumers, expenditure of investors, expenditure of government, and expenditure of what? NX or foreigners. So if you are selling something, your product or your focus of groups of customers can be ordinary people in the market, or your customers might be firms, or your customer might be government. Why? How can government might be? If you participate in what different governments projects like building a road or building a school or building a hospital, government hires private sector. So if you sell your product to, or if you participate in government different what tenders we call, you can buy or you can take government as a customer and sell to government what service or good and so on. And it is foreigners, so you can also see the customers, foreigners who also needs your what uh, who also needs your goods and services. So if we discuss each one, consumers, consumption. So what is it? Consumption, the spending by households and goods and services, with the exception of purchase of new housing. Because when you buy a new house, it is not consumption, it is what? Investment. Because when you buy a house, actually you invest for the long run. Second investment, the spending on capital equipment, So investment, what is it? Firm spending on capital equipment, inventories and structures, including new house. So buying a house, it is not consumption, it is what? Investment. So firms to produce goods and services, they need some equipment, they need some inventories, they need some technical, let's say, machines to produce goods and services. They want to enlarge their factories, or they want to modernize their their structure of production. That's why they have to spend some money, and this spending is also called what, as we have mentioned, investment. And next one, government purchases. The spending on goods and services by whom? By local, state, or federal governments. Does not include transfer payments because they are not made in exchange currency produced for goods. What does transfer payment mean? This is also very important, ladies and gentlemen. Transfer payment, it is the payment that government spends for social security spendings. What are the social security spendings? For example, it might be pensions for pensioners who get retired from the job, or subsidies for farmers, or social support expenditures of the government, like unemployment compensation, or for people who really needs money, like poor people or who has more children. So payment for children, support for families with many children by the government. So when government spends money for these pensions, for these social security needs, it is not counted as a government expenditure when we are calculating GDP. Why? Because when government is paying a pension, there is no product what was produced. For example, when I go to pension, I don't work, I don't produce any goods and services, but government is giving my money like free money. So this money has no equivalent in terms of goods and services. That is why we don't include this spending as a government expenditure when we are calculating what? GDP, or gross domestic product. Net export, imports minus export. So it is important how foreigners also spending money in your country. import, the spending of your local expenditures to abroad minus people's expenditure in your country gives net export. If you look to the percentage gross domestic product, it is in United States. I think this is the statistics in general, how much it is spent. So according to 2001 statistics in United States, 69% of GDP is calculated by consumption. You see, the most big part of investment, 16% goes to investment. Next one, 18% goes to government purchases, and minus 3 is net export. Minus 3 means import is more than export. That's why it is what minus 3 in general. We see. There are two types of GDP. It is nominal GDP and real GDP. Nominal GDP follows the production of goods and services at current prices. Real GDP follows the production of goods and services at constant prices. And an accurate view of economy requires adjusting nominal to real GDP by using the GDP deflator. So we want to find the adjusting nominal real GDP by using a GDP deflator. So to find real GDP, we use what GDP deflator. What is GDP deflator? For example, this is given. So we have price of hot dog, $1, $2, $3. The year is 2001, 2003. Quantity of hot dogs that are produced is 100, 150 to 100. Price of hamburger 2, 3, 4. Quantity of hamburgers 50, and so on. So we assume that in our economy we produce only percent hot dogs, and here is their prices. So in this situation, how do we calculate real GDP and how do we calculate nominal GDP? So in 2001, what happens? Price of hot dog multiplied by quantity of hot dogs plus price of hamburger multiplied by quantity of hamburger, it is $200. So we can say that in 2001, GDP of Kyrgyzstan, let's say, was $200. 2000 is the same formula, and our GDP is 600. In 2003, we used the same formula, and our GDP is $1,200. So the result of 200, 600, and 1,200, it is nominal GDP. We calculate GDP with the current prices. So current price is 1, 2, 3, and 2, 3, 4. So for example, we don't know this 200, 600, it increases how many times? 3 times it increases from 200 to 600. So this 600 increased because we produced more goods and services than the previous year, or this increase is only because of price. This 600 includes both of them, price effect and quantity effect together. But for us, is important is to find real GDP, how much quantity of goods and services were produced, not the price effect. To understand real GDP, we need to take price effect off and take base year's price as a base year, and the quantity 2, 3 we will not take. We will take each year only as $1 to see how the quantity has changed. So what do we do? As it's shown in here, 2001, for example, $1 again 200, and second year we take constant our $1, and third year is also $1, and base year's price is $2, $2, and $2. So we took prices a constant, but we change in quantity. We see that it is not 600 actually, it is $350. $350 in the second year, and it's not 1,200, it is $500 in third year. So it is not 700 is then we can say that it is only because of price, but real production was only with the product which is equal to $500. This is what real GDP or real gross domestic product. GDP deflator shows us changing total changing price. So is measure of price level calculated as the ratio of nominal GDP to real GDP times 100. So it tells us the rise in nominal GDP, that is due to rise the price rather than the rise in the quantity of produce. So GDP deflator equals to nominal GDP divided by real GDP, or amount of nominal GDP in real GDP multiplied by 100. So the GDP deflator shows us GDP deflator, nominal GDP over a real, or real GDP equals nominal GDP divided by GDP deflator multiplied by 100. Converting nominal GDP to what real GDP. So this is given, and this is what in United States again we see. What do we see? Real GDP. GDP and economic well-being. GDP is the best single measure of economic well-being of society, and GDP per person tells us income and expenditure of average person in the economy. Higher GDP per person indicates the higher standard of living. GDP is not a perfect measure of happiness or quality of life. However, why? Because GDP does not measure happiness of one country, or education system of one country, or healthcare system of one country, or people's main satisfaction, or their their well-being, yes, but not like the measurements out of money, they don't count. That's why it is not perfect measure. On the other hand, for example, some things that contribute to well-being are not included in, as I have mentioned, the value of leisure. It does not include the value of clean environment, and the value of almost all activity that takes place also outside of the market, such as the value of time parents spend with their children, and value of volunteer work, and so on. But in general, it can be said that if you have more money, you can have good education system. If you have more money, you can have good healthcare system. If you have more money, you can have more leisure time, and so on. That is why, in general, there is a relation, I think, between GDP and standard of living in one country, because every transaction has a buyer and seller. The total expenditure in the economy must equal the total income in the economy, and GDP is measures an economy's total expenditure on newly produced goods and services, and total income earned from production of goods and services as well. So second one, GDP is the market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given period of time. Is divided among four components and expenditure. It is consumption, investment, government purchase, and net export. And nominal GDP uses current price to value the economy's production. Real GDP uses constant base year price at value economy's production of goods and what services. The GDP deflator calculates from the ratio of nominal and real GDP, mirrors the level of GDP in the economy. GDP is a good measure of well-being economy because people prefer higher or lower incomes. It is not perfect measure of well-being because some things such as leisure time, clean environment are measured by what GDP. So was all about GDP. Was all about gross domestic product. So I'm going to ask the questions in midterm examination from this topic is very important. Second topic I couldn't cover today, but I hope you will study. This is about measuring. So what is it? Measuring cost of living. We will discuss about what CPI or Consumer Price Index. So please be ready from CPI as well. Okay, this is next chapter, chapter 6. I think I have sent the book. That is why study measuring cost of living plus measuring nation's income, as today we have mentioned. So two chapters you are responsible, from two chapters you are responsible, from chapter 5 and chapter 6, measuring cost of living plus measuring nation's income. Two chapters. The questions are going to be multiple choice. Please read, try to understand, and I hope it will be easy for you to pass this lesson. In case of any questions, you can write email to me, you can get contact with me. That's all for today.